Today I'm going to show you the fuel line configuration on the Poulan 2150. I've got it all apart right now to show you how it goes. Sometimes what happens is you take the carburetor off, you go to put it back on, and there's all these little fuel lines, especially when you have a primer on your chainsaw, so it can be confusing. I've made the mistake too of rehooking the wrong fuel line on the wrong connector. So a lot of YouTubers have been asking me what the fuel line configuration is on the Poulan 2150. Also, this configuration will apply to many other Poulan chainsaws as well. So as you can see here, I've got the cover off, I've got everything off as much as I had to show you the exact configuration. So I even unscrewed the primer bulb from here. I'm just going to bring it out like that. Now let's start with the primer bulb. You're going to notice that on the right hand side of the primer bulb, one line is a lot smaller than the other one. Let's follow this line. It goes all the way to this connector on the carb. So the bottom connector again will go to the right hand side connector of the primer bulb. Now the left hand side connector, which has the bigger fuel line, goes right to the fuel tank over there on that far right hand side. So I'm going to go a bit slow here so you guys have a lot of time to really look at them. So it's pretty easy. Small line goes to the bottom connector on the carb. Left line goes inside the tank over there on the right hand side. Now we've got one line left, which is the line on the top connector of the carburetor. Now let's follow that line and it will go in the fuel tank on the left hand side here. Now I'm going to pull the carb back a bit so you guys can see better. Now there's the line. It runs underneath the carburetor and into the fuel tank right there. And that's the line inside the fuel tank with the fuel filter on. So you're only going to have one fuel filter in the fuel tank hooked up to this line here. I'm just going to show you again, and there it is. Now when you reinstall your carburetor, make sure you don't pinch the small line in between the carburetor and the manifold down here. Make sure that it's underneath the carburetor, right down here. There you go. Top connector into the fuel tank. Make sure it's loose before you tighten the carburetor on. Once you figure that out, just put the primer bulb back in like that. And now screw it back in. Don't tighten the screws too much because you're only screwing into plastic and the threads can easily strip. So there's a quick view again. Now when you insert the fuel lines through the fuel tank, make sure they go in tight because that's the only thing that stops gas from leaking back out. So by the fuel lines going in tight, they create a good seal. Now this cover just goes here like that. Now the adjusting screws here are turned out at approximately 1.5 turns each. You may have to tweak your own chainsaw because sometimes different chainsaws will have a slightly different adjustment. So I've got it back together and I'm going to start it up just to show you that it does run with that fuel line configuration. So as you can see, it runs good like that. So if your chainsaw is not running right, make sure you've got the proper fuel line configuration. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in my next video.